Okay, and probably by then everyone starts thinking he's a wingnut anyways. But it cost him money, it disrupted it, and then court cases. We don't know the story. We haven't seen the end of this disruption yet, but that changed everything right there. That Uranus into Venus, 2017, 2018. But it's possible because he was the head of the courts and the military. This is a man in charge of all the military. He could set off the next nuclear war if he wanted to. Fortunately, there are people brave, but this brought some disruptions to it, shocks, making people alert to having to double watch him or safeguard what he's doing. Okay, now we back up to Saturn. Now he's survived. He's got past that. We're a year past that. It's starting to recover from this. So those aren't big shocks anymore. Those are just things that passed. Big shock, but the Mueller investigation is still going on. It's still there's still more and more things coming up. What really happened? It's funny. We're in Canada. We got a big problem with. We're worried because somebody's worried because our prime minister might have talked to someone to try and influence one of the attorney general, just to even talk to them before something happened. And there's a big scandal and fuss about it here. Everything's gone wrong and nobody knows even how to talk about it. But it's like all the different sides have backed off through this year. But Saturn's basically your hardworking friend that tells you what efforts you get what you get coming to you. You get the harvest you deserve. You don't get what you don't get coming to you. You're working at things. So this is Saturn's karma and time and age. So Saturn squaring his head in 2015. So that was probably when he made the decision he'd start to go. But he probably was forced to. He probably didn't want to go to be president, but they pushed him to go towards it. And he said, oh, okay, I'll do it. So Saturn pushed that in. That was pre-election. By the election, and it wasn't through the campaign, it wasn't so much. The big decision was before. Then November, the difficulty was Saturn conjunct his moon. He had to move into the White House, but his wife didn't want to move. So he's moving, there were pressures or delays around. The wife didn't want to move in until June, until after the school year. Then the Saturn hit the moon. So there were personal challenges, let's say. He had to pay attention to these personal needs. Why don't I just live in Trump Tower? Why do I have to stay in the government? He had used to his freedoms and he had to. So then it became the restrictions of Saturn. Just the minute he got office, 2017, Saturn opposed the sun that whole January. And he was as far away from his goals and his purpose as he can be. He had all these commitments around him. He wasn't aware of the responsibilities around him, and he wasn't necessarily dealing that well. Everyone was telling him what to do, and he's not listening that well. He's not a good listener. But anyways, this went on. Saturn went opposed to sun through all of 2017, and Saturn hit his moon. So those were really personally really difficult times, regrouping times, feeling hemmed in times, hemmed in by his position, by people around, by everything. At the same time, you had the disruptions going on, firing the FBI investigator. So he's in presidency, he was talking about all things going wrong with how the government should be and not listening to any of the complaints against them. It's a simple way of putting it. It's a bigger story, but you can see he's at a low end. So getting pregnancy we're getting the presidency, not pregnancy, presidency. Really pulled all the Saturn responsibilities around him, and he's put himself in a position where everybody's minding his business more than he's ever had to deal with before. He always scooted above it. Now he's got his hand tied by it because he has to cater to it to some degree. So he gets by that. He survived the first year. In 2018, it's not as extreme, but Saturn's still opposing his Mercury. So this was Mercury, his Mercury, Neptune, all his dreams and schemes. Saturn came along and said, that's a dream, that's a scheme. What are you doing? What's really happened? His dream, his plan of the wall is not happening. It's being delayed. What's happening? So he has a depression and he's getting the restriction around his thinking, cautious thinking. February, May, June 18, and November, December. Let's just go back here and we'll see. Okay, February 18, February, March, April. Okay, so that was announces that Tillerson, when nominated Mike Pompeo as Tillerson's replacement, fired the Secretary of State. The defamation or lawsuit can go against him. Banning transgender people in the FBI, and the FBI raids Cohen's office, his personal lawyer. Okay, that's perfect. His lawyer helped him scheme and plan things with Neptune. His Neptune squares the Saturn natally. Saturn comes in, they take the records. They don't even ask. They get the paperwork, you get that, and they subpoena it, and they go seize the records from his lawyer. Whoa. A big damper. Saturn's on his Mercury. He's got to start thinking a little bit more. And by April, he authorized a joint military sites in Syria after government reports using chemical weapons. By May, he's saying zero tolerance for illegal border crossing. So this whole period, from the going back and fighting in Syria, zero tolerance for illegal border. This is probably where decisions were made to separate families and kids and stuff like this. He's thinking one way, the practical repercussions of Saturn really heavy on this. So this goes along till comes back again November, December. So instead of looking at the whole year, this yesterday's news, we'll look at December. The Donald Trump Foundation, his phony agency, his nonprofit agency, which will give money to it, give it to causes, it decided to dissolve. So with that, probably was the ending of his false university too. So again, that came up in December. And he said, he announced that they defeated ISIS and was going to withdraw all his military from Syria. So he goes in place and he pulls away. It's not, that's the Uranus energy. Then that's this whole period, in November, December, into January was the shutdown, letting the government shut down. Yeah, it's not showing in, sorry, pull this out a bit more. Yes, we don't see it in 2019, but it went on in that time. That was the beginning of the long shutdown, yeah. So, and he's defending that there was no collusion between Russia and the States and whatever. He's saying, I did not lie. Mercury, Neptune, but Saturn's coming, got his lawyers' books, got things. It's likely there, a lot of disruptive things have been accumulated and recorded. He's running the country, so they can't catch him with it yet. But certainly a lot of information, and he knows he's been cramped in style, so he had to come out, he had to compromise and make a deal for the finances so here. So he's come up with a new plan, no big disruptions this year. But when he gets into 2020, beginning of next year, Saturn opposes his Venus, first 2 years, tightness around money and restrictions around what he wants, repercussions of the shocks of Venus. And like at the same time, the Saturn opposes Venus and Pluto squares the Venus. Then Neptune hits his moon, then Saturn opposes Venus and Pluto squares the Venus and Pluto squares the moon. These things start piling up together. This is no small thing in 2020. So this Saturn opposes the moon, not much money. Money's tight. If money's tight, how are you going to run a campaign? Then it might be blocked. Money might be blocked. There might be another shutdown. If there's a shutdown, how's it going to look for running your campaign? And then if you try and do something desperate with Neptune to the moon, this builds all the way up to August. If he fires up prejudice or confusion during the Neptune to the moon, it's still going to come back to Saturn opposing his Venus, August, September, October, November, the election campaign. This whole year is the election campaign. It's trying to swim upstream. It's not appreciated. It's like we're looking at the future. It's not really the history anymore. Here, we'll put this down. Okay. So, okay, now we have what our astrologers got to look at. We just have the main factors. We can go into it and pull up the 2-year factor and look at the months going on, what's going on, watch month by month, and try and imagine how it's going, because that's the energy and the adrenaline, what we're trying to do. This is Saturn's the limits. He's going to be running out of funds. He's not going to have more funds to build his wall. Or the funds used would have taken away so much from the military. There's not going to be money left to run a campaign, or some difficulties coming with finances and emotions. Saturn, and it's going to trigger off a bigger scandal. It's going to hit the nerve. So with CIA, with government, with other issues, he's in terms of getting good PR, good promotion, he's under attack the whole of 2020. And even Saturn, not as popular, as liked as possible. So he got in by a margin, by a small margin, but enough to throw the tide for the last election, 2016. But ever since then, there was no big hassles then. There's been nothing but Saturn, Venus, and the big waves are still coming up from that. So his popularity, his finance, his self-worth is going to be limited. It's going to be held back and dampened continuously all through this. So thinking he can win the election to get away from having to face the law is unlikely. I look at this, I think all the things here say it's unlikely to win the election, not on his own accord, unless some foreign country came in, put in a lot of money and bought him in and bought out things, but he's still not going to have any control over these things. It's going to be, there's a huge escalation of harsh and confusing and depressing things right through. He'll want to spend so much through the election and nothing's counting, nothing's working. So I think he's not going to get the money's going to get blocked, or he uses too much this year that comes up to be huge things. I mean, already we don't hear about it. You have to be living on the border to hear about it, but how many people that kids were separated from the parents, and like there's still hundreds, if not thousands of kids that never were reunited. They were put into an adoption agency and sold out and never got back to their families, so the people who tried to cross the border. And of them, most of the kids were raped and abused. So there's a lot of, in his deluded mercurial thinking, there's a gullibility. He's not realizing what's happening around him. As he does he has his hands tied more and more through the next year or two. So I haven't quite worked the chart to say, oh, he's not going to get in or he's going to get in, but it doesn't, there's certainly a lot of things stacked up against him. And even if he wins, there's a lot of power struggles. Like, if he doesn't win, that looks like the wave of impeachment is coming right quickly after it. But not impeached, but the way of going after the president when he's no longer president. That seems a very likely scenario. But enough difficult issues will continue to come up even before that. Does he try to escape? How do you escape from being president? You know, it's like, and in that period, most likely he'll have to move and change and move or whatever. There's not personal stability. So whether the relationship even holds during this period is another issue as well, or whether the family members stay on board. So it could be that if one of his kids starts talking and starts saying something, like that would be a big disruption for him. Like, it's really, he has big shocks and disruptions have happened. He's had a lot of planning going in. He set things up, but it's not, he got in power at his weakest time, so it's not set up really securely. He's been trying to regroup and secure his power since then. And as more and more people come aware with it, it's getting more polarized. More and more polarized, it's hard to say unless the Democratic Party self-destructs or splits apart again or doesn't rebuild enough and he gets in again. If he gets in again, he's going to be very harsh and there's going to be very nasty things happening during that time that like could easily pull into wars or other things. If you put this just as financial trade deals, he's not getting softer or more clear in what's going on. He's getting more harsher or more rigid. So